And I just want to say that it's actually not quite as hard as you might think, and that we're all equipped with this amazing internal compass. It's right there. And we just need to learn how to tap into it.
I'm Heather Grish, and this is the Wisdom of the Body podcast. This podcast explores the idea of body intelligence as the real key to learning the knowledge of life, or what we call Ayurveda in the ancient language of Sanskrit. We do that by connecting with today's creative leaders and experts who will help you listen to your body, trust your gut, and live in deeper harmony with nature. Come join me as we unlock the golden door to clear, direct perception and become very deep listeners. You can find the Wisdom of the Body podcast on Apple, Spotify, and Stitcher. You can also follow us by joining my email at heathergrish.com or on Instagram at heathergrish. I know you're going to love this podcast, so take a second right now to subscribe. Today, I'm here with Carolyn Warsham. Carolyn is a cookbook author, a food writer, and a corporate director turned life and career coach centered in spirituality. She coaches in one-on-one and group settings and is dedicated to helping her clients end the patterns that aren't working for them and start fresh, whether that's at work, in relationships, have mindset shifts, and more. She's an entrepreneurial journalist and publicist by background who has written several books. Her clients call her when they feel the nudge that there's something more out there for them, but they're not quite sure what, or when they feel ready to pursue that dream vocation, or when they realize that negative thought patterns are holding them back. Typical outcomes are healed relationships, new jobs, and finally starting that one day or someday project that's on the back burner. Thank you so much for being here, Carolyn. It's so lovely to be with you.
Thank you for having me. I love hearing my bio. It's so nice.
So fancy.
Excited to be here.
Cool. Well, you're an entrepreneurial journalist and publicist who's written several books, but there was actually a moment in your life where you almost started flipping houses. I want to hear this story. Can we start there today?
Definitely, yes. So this was, I don't know if it was rock bottom, but it was pretty close. And I know many of us have had that experience, especially in the past few years with the pandemic. But for me, it was right after I had my son. And as a new mom, I was evaluating my life with a lens that I had never worn before and just feeling like I needed more purpose. And when it was time to go back to work, it needed to really matter. For whatever reason, having a child just kind of planted that seed in me. And at the time, I was, of course, struggling with sleep deprivation and all of the things that come along with being a new mom. And I just remember knowing that I needed a change and searching everywhere for it, on Instagram posts, promotional emails that came my way, radio ads. And that's what you're referring to, was a radio ad about flipping houses that got me. I was like, okay, this sounds great. I'm going to make tons of money. I'm going to flip houses. I can do this. I can learn how to do this. And I started going down this path. And then I had this moment, which I now know was kind of like my higher self dropping in, where I was like, what am I doing? What in the heck am I doing flipping houses? This is not me. This is not Carolyn. And that's the voice that I learned to trust as the guiding force in my life. But it was a long process, and it catalyzed a lot of spiritual growth in me. And when I got to a certain point, I wanted to start giving back to people with all of the tools and modalities and things that I learned along the way. So it's a long story.
Oh my gosh. So had you gone that far into it?
No.
Because I'm like,
thank God. No, what happened is, so I was talking to my good friend, Christina, who lived next door to me. And I was like, I just need some help. I think I need to talk to someone. I feel so like utterless. And she had this amazing coach friend. And she said, why don't you talk to my coach friend? She's amazing. She's helped everyone I know who's ever spoken with her. And this woman was so kind. She had a full roster, but she offered to do a quick phone call with me. And I will never forget when she said to me, Carolyn, it sounds like you're just grasping for answers all outside of yourself and looking everywhere for them besides inside yourself. And the answers are always inside yourself. And when she said that, it was like this ring of truth came through my being. And I knew she was so spot on. And she told me about the Artist's Way, which, have you heard of the Artist's Way?
Yes, I have a story about that. I'll tell you later.
Oh, really? For me, it was amazing. I dove into it head first, which is how I tend to be, and journaled basically 3 pages a day for about 3 months, and it changed my life. It legitimately set me off on a completely different trajectory that started from within. And that's the way that we realize our highest potential.
Okay. You feel utterlessness, and then you take away the things that you're grasping at, right? Are you then ignoring those voices, or are you in this process, right? Because I think a lot of people, we don't like uncertainty too. I mean, there's so many things, right? So even if you know what you want, you also don't like the uncertainty, right?
Yes. And really what it is a process of quieting the mind and stop making mental decisions and making decisions with your body. So the mind will confuse you. The ego is there. There's all these stories and it won't lead you in the right direction. So that is really the light bulb moment. When you learn that the chatter in your mind is not what you should be listening to. That is not where the answers are. And you can step back, which meditation helps you do. You look at it and you say, okay, well, what's my body telling me? How does my body feel when I think about going down this path in the future? Does it constrict? If it constricts, maybe that's not the way. Does it expand? And do I start to feel lighter and more aligned? Okay, then let's ask a few more questions about that path. Sounds like your body likes that path. I was just going to say that this delineation between mind-based decisions and body-based decisions is really what led me on the human design path, because that's basically what human design is all about.
Yeah, I would love to. Let's do it. Yeah. Well, I was just thinking so for other people, they're feeling this nudge that there's something more out there for them. And for you, was this flipping houses moment the first time you felt that nudge, or was there a nudge that happened before that sort of kind of got you started on the whole looking outside yourself thing in the first place?
Great question. So the nudge was something deeper and all-encompassing. And it was really just this feeling of not being fulfilled in my current life. It was like this deep yearning for something more. And I didn't know what to do with it. I wasn't experienced enough with what to do with it. I hadn't had coaching. All I had was this empty feeling. And so I followed my mind and I followed the tides of society and just was responding to everything being thrown at me from ads, from Instagram, from anything I saw in my external world, just out of a desire to find some North Star, not knowing where to look. So I wasn't responding to the nudge in the most potentially fruitful way. And what I learned is that there is a much better and easier way to respond to those nudges. And it's just about tuning into your body and quieting your mind.
So as you've been traveling through, because you've been in a lot of different worlds, including motherhood as a world, right? So the entrepreneurial world, the media world, you're an author, that world, you've worked in corporations, like in so many different worlds, the spirituality realm, the wellness world, all these different worlds that you've gone through. What are you seeing happen with people even as they travel through all of these worlds?
I love this question. So I would say that they're all the spiritual world, something that I've been playing with lately, especially in a corporate environment. I'm noticing that themes of spirituality are starting to eke their way into the corporate environment in really meaningful and necessary ways. And we're all spiritual beings, whether we know it or not. I believe that we are all connected to universe, source, God, whatever you want to call it. And I'm sure you've heard about the whole Great Resignation and everyone leaving their jobs left and right, because I think people are feeling that nudge that I felt. I think people are feeling deeply unsatisfied and like shit's falling apart. And it's time for me to find a purpose and for me to work somewhere where I'm valued and to be somewhere where I feel more aligned. And corporations, I don't think they know that they have to necessarily be more spiritual, but what they do know is that they have to serve their people better because they're all leaving. And so I've seen a lot of huge corporations starting to adopt more employee-centric programs like talent development and teaching new skills and teaching managers empathy and helping different employees pursue different career paths within the umbrella of the same corporation. So I really feel like all of these worlds are waking up in their own way. And it's actually a quite exciting time to be on planet Earth, despite all the chaos that we're seeing around us.
Yeah. So when we're looking for the clues, though, that we've got this, and I don't know that there's this nudge that we're meant for something more. I don't know if it's a sense of expansion, or you described it as like there was this space, or maybe, I don't know if another way to say that is a void. Like
Yeah.
one of the ways that you described it was a space, which I actually think is really interesting that this happened to you after you had your kid, because like I had this experience of having greater sense of purpose as well. I mean, I wrote a book like you wrote both of your books after you had your kid, and I wrote my book after having a kid. And something about that experience really did like make me feel more like I needed to find that greater sense of purpose. But what I think is funny is that also after we have a kid, we do have more space in our bodies, right? Because we like got stretched out. Now we're like coming back together, but their bodies don't even come back together in the same way. So even just being in that different spatial positioning in our body would even make us have a different experience of our bodies. And we would need to fill that, with purpose. I don't know, with blood and with passion, and I don't know. So I just think it's really interesting that both of us had this experience of after, getting more of that after having a kid. But when we're looking for these clues, because we may have that sense, but we don't know exactly how it's going to manifest. So when we're looking for these clues, like you said, you were looking at all the radio ads and stuff like that. Is there actually a time where we should look for clues outside of ourselves, or should we always be looking for the clues inside ourselves?
I love that question. I think that we're always connected to the clues outside of ourselves. They're there. We're steeping in that tea. It's the tea of earth. It's everywhere. We're inundated, right? So when we quiet down, we're working with spirit, and the universe will drop in the right external things. Or we might be quiet enough or connected enough to our body to really resonate when we hear a certain radio ad, and we're connected to our body enough to know that feeling of truth in our body. It really does all come back to the body. And the way that we learn to connect with it is really through stillness and quieting the mind.
Yeah. So everybody needs to be doing more meditation and more yoga, people.
I would say journaling, honestly. I know, because meditating sure doesn't sound sexy to a lot of people. And I know it's so intimidating if you haven't done it. And it kind of sucks in the beginning because it's very hard to quiet the mind and you think you're doing it wrong, which you're not. But journaling is a great gateway, because if you can just journal and give yourself permission to just write whatever, write gobbledygook, write whatever's coming through your mind, you clear out a lot of clutter. And it actually opens up a channel to your higher self. It opens up a channel to a higher awareness and a higher truth that eventually starts to come through you. And you start to really connect in and see all kinds of interesting things come out on the page. It's a really amazing process.
And you brought up the artist's way. And the funny story that I wanted to share was that when I was living in San Francisco, when I was, I was probably 24 or 23, and I was just leaving a party late at night, and I was on a bus, and this random guy, really skinny, probably vegan man, in the middle of the night, it's like midnight or 1 a.m. and we're the only two on the bus. And right as he's getting off the bus, he got off the stop, one or two stops before me. He basically comes up to me and he goes, "You need to read the book, The Artist's Way." And then he gets off the bus.
Whoa.
And so I bought the book. I took it as a message, but I bought the book, but then I didn't read it. I put it on my shelf and I brought it with me every time I moved to a new apartment. I kept it for 10 years and then I read it. And I went through all my breakthroughs then, but I kept it. I said, I'm not ready for this book.
Amazing. So that's a perfect example of the internal and external working together, because that was an external thing that happened in your world. And if you weren't as connected to your body, which the title of your podcast is Wisdom of the Body, so I know that you're connected to your body.
I'm probably a little too connected to my body.
I don't know if that's possible. So if you weren't so connected to your body, you might have just been freaked out and been like, oh no, I'm never getting near that book, right? And it was actually the universe trying to show you something and trying to push you along your path. But you were able to kind of relax into that experience and say, oh, wow, there's some new awareness. I'm going to go check the book out. So I think that's a perfect example of those two working together.
Yeah. And imagine what would have happened if I didn't go, I'm not ready for that book. That I like, if that belief, right, that said, no, you're not ready to be an artist, Heather.
Right. Well, you did wait a while, right? You waited
10 years. But imagine if I read the actual book when I bought it instead of leaving it on my shelf for 10 years.
Yeah. Maybe your soul wasn't ready for it yet.
Yeah.
It's probably happened in divine timing.
Some other lesson I had to learn then.
Yeah, completely.
We had you on the show about a year ago when your last book came out. That was the one that you co-authored with your husband, Blair Warsham, Eat Plants Every Day. It's up on my shelf right there. I don't have it in front of me, but you've traveled in all these different worlds. How do you think we really know when we're putting out a message into the field? How do we know when that message is actually like really, really, really landing with people?
I feel that you don't necessarily want to worry about if it's landing with people or not. You want to focus on how you feel in your body. And you want to cultivate a feeling of happiness, joy, feeling aligned. And when you are in that space, it's really your vibration that's going up. And when your vibration is higher, you're able to attract the things in life that are really meant for you. And they're really pieces or breadcrumbs towards your higher path. So it's an internal game. And when we start worrying about if things are landing with other people, XYZ, I always like to say, what other people think of you is none of your business, right? I'm sure you've heard that phrase. And I think it's really true. When you worry about what other people are thinking of you, you get caught in another head game. And it's just wasting your precious energy. So that's how I like to think about it.
Yeah. So you're really into using human design in your coaching practice. I know that's one of the backgrounds, one of the modalities that you studied. And what the audience doesn't know is that I sent Carolyn my birth info, and she ran my information through the human design system. I don't know actually what it's called because I don't know anything about human design. So Carolyn, what did you find out about me looking at my birth information?
Yeah. So human design is amazing, everyone. So the reason I love to use it with clients is because it's almost like you're looking at someone's online dating profile before you meet with them for the first time. What human design shows you is how your energy flows and how your energy is meant to work on this earth, how you're meant to make decisions, how you're meant to do work, and so much more. So there's 5 different energy types, which I can get into a little bit later. But basically, Heather, you are a manifester.
That sounds so cool. Tell me. No.
It is pretty cool. So only 10% of the population are manifestors.
Oh, are they all left-handed?
No. Blair is actually a manifester too, my husband, for those who are listening. So the manifester actually comes from the lineage of the king and the queen. And the energy is an initiating energy. Manifestors are here to bring in ideas and to share them. You're always probably feeling like you're getting ideas if you're feeling aligned. And you are here to initiate others into action, to inspire others into action, to inspire others to do work based on the ideas that you share. Does any of that resonate with you?
Well, I mean, I used to be head of product development for a health insurance company. So, yeah, I mean, certainly it does. And it's funny because one of the things I've personally been seeing, my shoulders are going up and getting all like, oh, one of the things I've been like struggling with personally lately is just like how I work and how I spend my time. And I'm very good at setting up systems, but I hate managing them.
Yes, that makes perfect sense.
It's like, I just hate it. I can do it, but I'm not happy when I do it. Like I can do it because I'm competent and I'm detail oriented and I'm committed and I'm persistent and I have all these things, but I really, really don't enjoy it. I really enjoy the energy of beginnings. And it's actually one of the reasons that I focus on preconception rather than like postpartum, or because I view that as like there's the beginning phase, which is preconception. That's phase 0. And then you have, the baby's growing and the mom, there's been an event, there's a conception, and then it's growing. To me, that's like the easy part because everything's already been like,
yeah, kickstarted.
yeah. And then there's, the event of afterwards and the baby, because there's in coming out, and then you've got this new being and it transforms into something else. But I've always been intrigued by that, the front end of a process. That's always where my partner's an inventor. Like, I just like to be with beginning energy. And
that's exactly the manifestor in you. You're speaking your design. Manifestors are all about beginnings. So Blair, my husband, is a manifestor and he's a consultant, and it's a perfect role for him because he comes in, he helps with an idea, he builds the idea, and then he leaves. That's like the dream thing for a manifestor, because doing the day-to-day work is such a slog for a manifestor. It's really not their zone of genius. Manifestors like to color outside the lines. As a kid, you might have liked to kind of just like wander off. Your parents might have been like, where's Heather going? Because you were just in your own mind, doing your own thing. You don't like to be told what to do, which is why you don't find a lot of manifestors in corporate environments unless they're like the CEO, because manifestors do not like to be told what to do. So really interesting to do human design. Well, first of all, tell me how that lands for you.
If you are embarking on a fertility journey and are ready to have your mind blown about what your body is really capable of and how it's impacted by the environment, then check out my book, The Ayurvedic Guide to Fertility. You can actually download the introduction to the book for free on my website at heathergrish.com. That's Heather, GRZYCH.com. Read the intro for free and then buy the rest of this fertility enlightening book pretty much anywhere books are sold. I think the two jobs that I've had in the corporate world where I had them the longest were head of product development and also as a consultant. And same kind of thing. Like, if you put me in charge of like operations or like managing a team that does the same thing every day, and it's really just about doing it with accuracy and like little tiny process improvements and stuff like that, I would just get bored out of my skull. I would be so bored. And I think that what was always interesting to me about being in a product development role was that I was always working on something new, even though I was working within this like stable organization. I was always able to work on something new because you're just developing new ideas. You're like essentially just an incubator and getting the things to manifest, right? That was my role. And I think a lot of people that are in that role are actually CEO potential, but that role is actually like a managing without authority kind of role, which I think I prefer that actually than to like a CEO role, because I'm not like super into authority. Even though I have an East Coast accent, sometimes can sound mildly authoritative, but it's not. Like, I prefer to be in like something that has more of a feeling of support.
Well, that completely makes sense too, because as a manifestor, you do need support. You don't have the daily energy necessarily for making all of the things happen. And that support is what makes all of the things happen. Like, you're really there to just be the inspiring person. So yes, manifestors very much need support. They need to delegate. So it really does sound like you're living your design in what you're doing, which is great.
Well, I mean, what I'm doing now, which is like, I have my own business, which in some ways it's like, it's a little bit of I'm outside of my comfort zone, to be perfectly honest. I would do better if I had like a COO kind of person that like ran all my operations and stuff like that. But I have to build the thing first. Right?
You need a projector. Projectors are the ones that you give the project to, and they see all the pieces and all the talent, and they can see the strengths in people, and they can pull a team together and be like the puppet master. And then you need some generators to just like do your daily stuff. Generators are the ones that just work every day. They have that energy for work. I am a manifesting generator. So I wake up every day and I'm like, okay, I feel like I'm like an Energizer rabbit. I'm like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And that's a little bit of that.
You definitely are. I think that's one of the things is that, so you have a full-time job, you have a child, and on top of that, you write a book. or then you're done writing the book. Okay, on top of that, I'm going to work on my coaching practice. So, a lot of people, they can be like a parent and then have a child or two children or something like that. But it seems to me that you've always had this like excess of energy that you've been able to put into a lot of different places that makes you actually quite dynamic. So when you look at your bio, for example, when I got to know you, it made a lot of sense about why you had so much energy to put into, like, why you're able to accomplish so much, which I don't think everybody can. You need to know what, not that you can, but I don't think some people would be happy,
Yeah.
Doing that.
100%. That's the cool thing about human design, is that it really validates how you're spending your energy in your days and helps you create a strategy for your life that's really aligned with how you're meant to be. So the other piece of it is your authority, which is how you're meant to make decisions. And you and I are both emotional authority. Emotional authority has to wait the longest to make decisions, because when a decision presents itself to us, we usually have some kind of an emotional reaction to it, and we have to experience this wave. So for me, it might be like this crazy excitement in the beginning about like, yes, I want to do it. And it feels very impulsive. And I need to ride that out. And then often a day or two later, I'll be like, well, why did I even ever entertain that? What was I thinking? And I almost become a bit repulsed by the idea. And I have to wait that out too. And then once I get to a place of neutrality, then I'm meant to make decisions. That was huge for me, because I spent pretty much until I was 35, 37, making excited, impulsive decisions. And I always kind of prided myself on it. Like when I moved to California, it was completely on a whim. I just was like, yep, I'll quit my job. Let's do it. Let's throw all the things in the bag. We're off. And I did the same thing when I moved to Colorado. Just super excited. I think I was out at a bar and just decided, yep, let's do it. Let's move to Colorado. And I put myself in some situations that ended up not really panning out quite well for myself. So when I learned that I was an emotional authority and it was right for me to really sleep on decisions, it was like a huge light bulb went off, and it was just really clicked.
I think I've had more of those problems in relationships.
That makes sense. That totally makes sense. Yeah. Do you sleep on your decisions, or do you tend to feel like you have like a strong gut feeling in the moment?
It depends on if the decision is one that was an opportunity that somebody presented me with, and I have to decide whether or not I have to take that opportunity, or if it's a decision about me deciding on something to put my energy into that is not necessarily externally initiated. Does that make sense, the way that I explain those two things? Like one would be, for example, I got a job offer. So if I'm on a board and they're like, are you going to run for the board again? And I'm like, oh, literally waited till the last minute to decide because I wasn't sure. But then I think I take a long time for my decisions, actually. I think I take a long time for my decisions, and then I either have a deadline or I start wrestling with it and I go into an emotional blow up, actually. And then the emotional blow up actually helps me resolve it.
That makes sense. That makes sense. If you're waiting to get to the other side of the emotional blow up, that's very much sounds like part of your process.
Yeah.
That's
I like
cool.
a good emotional blow up to make a decision.
We need it.
Yeah.
As emotional authorities. And that's the other thing, is like, you just realize, oh, this is just my process. There's nothing wrong with me. I'm not going crazy. I actually really need to experience these feelings to make a decision. And cool. Let's watch it happen. Let's go on the ride.
And I think before I knew that that was the process that worked for me, that I needed an emotional blow up, was I would put spreadsheets and analyze data, and I would just drive myself nuts because I have the mental horsepower to be able to do that. That's fine. But it would just get me so totally stuck. Do you see that with a lot of people?
That's what I do still, to kind of just like, it's almost like a journaling process in a way, just like get it all out on paper, write out all the things, all the pros and cons. And then often what I do is just throw that piece of paper away and make a gut-based decision. But I feel like on some level, all of those facts and figures and details have seeped into my being. And I feel like I've done my due diligence.
Yeah. It's like part of creating your inner truth that then leads to the place. Like it's part of creating your perspective, or like clarifying your perspective in some way.
Completely. You also have a defined spleen, which means you have a very strong intuition. So you do likely get an intuitive hit like instantly in the moment, almost before you can even realize it. But it's still good for you to wait out that emotional wave.
She's reading me.
It's fun. I can do it forever.
This is very different than an astrology reading, I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
Which also is very valuable information. Okay, so one of the things that I know, because you're really are a communications expert with the type of background that you have, you know, which is why I asked the question about like, how do you know if your message is really landing with someone, or if it's all for the purpose of getting the connection, getting the right connections, or getting the connections that fit with, okay. What are one of the things I've seen you write about before and talk about before is jargon. And like, first of all, what is jargon? Like, what is it? And what's the issue with it?
Jargon is so common in our culture these days, and it seeps into every aspect of society, but it's basically like internal baseball. It's basically words that are only understood by an elite few. So you see it a lot in the corporate space. Things like, you have a thing that people say, a BHAG, which means big, hairy, aggressive goal. The first time I heard it in a meeting, I was like, what is a BHAG? And I felt like an outsider. I felt like I wasn't included. And that's what jargon does. It creates like the clique that gets it and the clique that doesn't get it. And it exists very much in the spiritual world and the world of coaching now too. Like if you follow any coaches on Instagram or anywhere, you'll see them saying things like join my masterclass, or I'm hosting a container of women and we are going to grow in this container. I remember the first time I heard that, I was like, a container? Like, are you going to put me in a fishbowl? Like, what is going to happen to me? It happens. It seeps into our brain. I don't fault the people that use it because it's just part of the industry and you use it without realizing it. But it does alienate the audience to a certain degree, especially if they're new to you and they want to learn about you. And then it also, you know, there's all kinds of phrases like step into your power, speak your truth, tap into the quantum. And you hear these things and I know Blair, when I talk to him, he's like, what are you talking about? Like, unsubscribe. I have no idea what this means. This is not my language. But the thing is, it is everyone's language. Like, especially in this coaching and spiritual world, these are concepts that really are evergreen and pertain to everyone. So I think it's the job of the coach to be self-aware about these phrases and unpack them and just use colloquial terms so that people can relate to you and benefit from all the gifts that you have to offer. Mm-hmm. So it's something I feel really passionately about. Also, probably with my background as a journalist, I'm just very into words. So I think about it a lot.
Well, what about, I don't know if it's certain scientific terms, or in my case, we use a lot of Sanskrit because Ayurveda we were taught in books that had Sanskrit in them. And sometimes there actually isn't even a word in English that has the meaning of that word, because that's also a trap too. Not trap, but it's a challenge, right? Because the amount of time you have to spend explaining something versus just using that word that doesn't have an equivalent in that language is really tricky. But also, like, when you're trying to talk about a medical condition even, right? So if you look at the medical diagnosis names or something, you could just be like, my toe is red.
Yeah.
I have diarrhea. Like, my
is that
period
what red toe means?
No, I'm just saying, but like, you know, I guess it's the difference between talking about like the symptoms of something and the experience of something, versus the label that is on something.
100%. And it takes a little bit more work in many cases because the jargon is shorthand. It's a way of quickly explaining often a more complex topic. So I think for you in the world of Ayurveda, you could have fun coming up with your own longhand and your own little way of speaking about it in a way that really relates to people. And it could be like a metaphor or something that really lands and is easily understandable by people without an Ayurvedic degree.
For sure. And it's definitely a challenge. And I think it's also one of the things when we think about our health, once we like, or say you've gotten a diagnosis of something. Carolyn, you are being diagnosed with excess beautificationists. No, I don't know.
Sounds awesome.
then you're walking around going like, oh, I have excess beautificationists.
You're Googling the heck
yes,
out of it.
Yes, that does sound good, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but then you become the person that has that, and you start like identifying with that thing, right? Rather than like paying attention to the little things that have made up that thing and what influences those little things that make up that thing. But I think, really concerned about jargon and what I do for sure, and terminology. And it's been a big challenge, to be honest. Yeah.
Yeah, it just takes a lot of self-awareness, and I always catch myself using it. And it's a great opportunity to go back and just use words that others relate to.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So you basically have done my human design chart. And so you know everything about me.
I do.
You need to tell me what to do with my life. And you're using this in your coaching practice and, doing all the things in your own life too, right? Because it's not like once we go into this healing profession or whatever it is, it's like, oh, everything's figured out. I don't know. For me, do you feel this way? Even I felt this way about yoga. I felt like me being in practice was a way to reinforce it in myself, the thing that I feel like everybody else needs, but I also still need it. And it helps me in some ways. I don't want to give it like too much of an equivalent, but I think when you find a healing modality, it's like Alcoholics Anonymous, right? You're an alcoholic, you get the process to help your alcoholism, and then you want to be part of it and you want to counsel other people. And like, to me, it's like, this is what happens when you find a healing path, like no matter what the path is.
100%.
So how does this help you in your life being in this role?
Oh, it's just so incredible. And it is such a like interwoven process. But I very much believe that the more you heal yourself, the more capacity you have to catalyze the healing in others. And usually what coaches and healers see is people that are on the same path or journey as they are, but they're just a few steps behind. And it's that me sharing my journey and me sharing in great detail what I've done to heal myself in certain aspects of my life. When those moments occur in coaching sessions, those are the times when I see my clients really sit up on the edge of their seats. Those are the times when I see them integrating things and see light bulbs go off because they're relating to my human experience. And that's inspiring. And then they feel, very simply, if Carolyn can do it, I can do this. So I love it. I love how coaching people inspires me to make myself a better human being. But I've also really been a self-help junkie for most of my life. So I do feel that it's my calling. I know that it's why I'm here. And thanks to the work I've done, I feel that in my body and I know what truth feels like. So I feel really blessed. But I do, to answer your question, feel like, yes, they have to be one and the same. Everything you say makes perfect sense.
Well, since you brought up the body, what does the wisdom of the body mean to you?
Everything. It means that your body is your compass. Your body is your wisdom. It's the only wisdom. It's where truth sits, and your body is connected to the universe, and it's how you tap into your ultimate potential. What does it mean to you, Heather?
Well, this is the question that I ask everybody at the end. I think there's a couple interviews where I didn't ask it. And God, no one's actually brought the question back to me.
It's kind of a hard one, honestly.
Well, yeah. I mean, I was working on an idea for a book and I was like, oh, this is going to be great. I'm going to call this book Wisdom of the Body. And I still haven't written this book. It's like a book I'll write in the future. And then I looked and there already was a book with that name. And it was written in the 30s or something. And it was basically about how it was actually written by a medical doctor who did all these experiments on like dogs to be a proxy for human bodies. Because it was like before that was frowned upon. Before animal, so much dog, testing was bad. Before PETA probably. But anyway, it was really about like this guy doing all these things and different scientists doing different experiments to find out, well, if you do this to a body, what happens? If you do this to a body, what happens? If you do this to a body, what happens? In all these controlled environments. And it's about homeostasis. It's about how homeostasis gets disrupted, like what allows it, what brings it forth, and what disrupts it, basically. And so a lot of what you've been saying about, the answers are inside, and this mind and body connection is very much connected to even the illnesses that we get. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that any form of medicine has really done a good enough job to really help people understand that. And I think the reason is because it is only a felt experience.
Mm-hmm. 100%. Yeah. And I know it can sound frustrating to hear the answers are inside yourself to a lot of people. And it's a process, I will say. And it's something that a lot of coaches out there can help you with. And I just want to say that it's actually not quite as hard as you might think, and that we're all equipped with this amazing internal compass. It's right there. And we just need to learn how to tap into it. And unfortunately, the forces of society just push us to go, 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 do, do, do. We get sucked in a million directions, and it just disconnects us from that internal compass. So it's really just a process of disconnecting from that external stimula and connecting in. And there's so many different ways to do it.
Carolyn, you have a program that's starting very soon. Do you want to tell them about it and tell them how to get in touch with you?
Yes, I would love to. So I have a program called Begin Again, and it is starting next month. It's for women, and basically I just felt really inspired to start a group program because of everything that's been happening in the world lately. I'm seeing so many people just feel burnout, depressed, sad about the state of the world, and just really getting down. A lot of women just feeling overwhelmed by life and all the different balls they're holding in the air. And so I wanted to take all of the tools and modalities and different mindset shifts that I use to catalyze transformation in my clients and put them into a group format and offer them to a group of women who are like-minded. I think the other opportunity that I'm looking to create is just real conversations. I think a lot of women are ready to go deep and want to connect with like-minded women who want to grow. So I'm super excited about it. It's the first time I'm doing it. So it's in beta. So I'm offering it for a steal of a price. And it's going to be an amazing opportunity to be a founding member of this group that I know I'm going to continue for a long time. So if you want to find out more, you can check out the link in the show notes. I know Heather's going to put it there.
I will definitely put it there. Well, it's been so lovely catching up with you, and I feel like I learned something about myself.
There's so much more.
And I'm like,
I'll call you. I'll tell you all the other things.
Oh, good. Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been lovely catching up with you.
It was awesome to see you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks for having me, Heather.
I want to thank you for listening to this show. It brings me great pleasure to provide this content to you. I also want to let you know that I'll be making some very amazing announcements soon. And if you're not already on my email list, then I encourage you to go over to my website and subscribe to my email list so that I can keep you informed about these announcements that are going to be coming up very soon. So my website is heathergrish.com. That's Heather, GRZYCH.com. And I look forward to getting these important announcements to you very soon and connecting. Thank you for tuning in and dropping in with us today. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. I really want to hear your feedback. To learn more about my work, visit heathergrish.com. That's Heather, GRZYCH.com. And meet me here next time on the Wisdom of the Body.